I was taking a group of people falconing up in Goshen, New York, up in the Hudson Valley. And I was supposed to meet them there at like maybe 8 or 9. I was driving up maybe, really early, like 7. And that woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it, a young bear. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear, and it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator. And you can do that in New York State. You can get a bear tag for a roadkill bear. And so then we went hawking, and I had the bear in my car. And then we had a really good day, and we went late. We were catching a lot of game, and the people really loved it, so we stayed late. And instead of going back to my home in Westchester, I had to go right to the city because there was a dinner at Peter Luger's Steakhouse. And at the end of the dinner, it went late, and I realized I couldn't go home. I had to go to the airport. And the bear was in my car, and I didn't want to leave the bear in the car because that would have been bad. So then I thought, at that time, this was the little bit of the redneck in me. There'd been a series of bicycle accidents in New York. They had just put in the bike lanes, and saw a couple of people had gotten killed, and it was every day, and people had gotten badly injured. Every day it was in the press. And so I thought, I wasn't drinking, of course, but people were drinking with me who thought this was a good idea. And I said, I had an old bike in my car that somebody had asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. So everybody thought that's a great idea. So we went and did that, and we thought it would be amusing for whoever found it or something. The next day, it was like, it was on every television station. It was the front page of every paper, and I turned on the TV, and there was like a mile of yellow tape, and there were 20 cop cars. There were helicopters flying over it. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And then there was some people on TV in Tyvek suits with gloves on lifting up the bike, and they were saying they're gonna take this up to Albany to get a fingerprinted. And I was worried because my prints were all over that bike. Luckily, the story died down after a while, and it stayed dead for a decade. And the New Yorker somehow found out about it, and they're going to do a big article on me, and that's one of the articles. So they asked me, the fact checker said, it's going to be a bad story. Right?
I think it's a great story.
That right there was RFK Jr. admitting to dumping a 6-month-old bear cub in Central Park. Folks, if you thought 2024 in this political cycle couldn't get any crazier, it just did. So I figured let's break down the state of play where we're at. RFK Jr. is the leading independent candidate for president right now. He's polling anywhere between 4 and 7% and has been named to the ballot in a number of states. Well, RFK Jr. previously admitted that he had a dead worm in his brain, and now he's admitting, prefacing a New Yorker article that's going to come out about this, that he actually dumped a 6-month-old bear cub in Central Park. Because according to him, he found the bear cub on the side of the road and was going to allegedly take its meat and store its meat and potentially eat its meat later on. But when his day got derailed and he had to go to Peter Luger's Steakhouse in New York for a dinner, he just decided to dump the bear cub in Central Park. And it's funny because for 10 years now, no one knew who did this, right? When it first happened, the New York Times, CNN, they were all discussing, there is a black dead bear cub in New York City in Central Park. Who could have done this? Well, we now know it was RFK Jr., who is now running for president. So that's the independent candidate. On the Republican side, Donald Trump last night praised Vladimir Putin, congratulating him for a recent prisoner swap that saw 4 wrongfully detained Americans come home. Now, Vladimir Putin shouldn't be congratulated, folks. Vladimir Putin was the reason that 4 Americans were being wrongfully detained in Russia on trumped-up charges, literally for doing nothing. Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan were both accused of espionage when they had nothing to do with being a spy. Whereas the folks that Russia got home were actually spies. And a funny anecdote, or a really crazy anecdote, was that 2 of the spies that Russia got back in the prisoner swap had 2 children. And their 2 children landed in Moscow, met with Vladimir Putin the night of the prisoner swap. And Vladimir Putin had to speak to them in Spanish because the spies were posing as an Argentinian couple in Slovenia. The children didn't know that they were Russian. They didn't know who their parents' real identity really was. They didn't even know who Vladimir Putin was. So they don't speak Russian, but they are now forced to live in Russia because their parents were spies and part of their prisoner exchange. So anyways, Donald Trump congratulated Vladimir Putin for that. Donald Trump also complained about a crowd size in Atlanta in a venue that Kamala Harris easily filled up with over 19,000 people. So that's where Donald Trump is. And remember, he's also a convicted felon. He is down in the polls in many swing states right now, or is tied despite leading in the polls weeks ago. And on the Democratic side, you have Kamala Harris, who's about to pick her vice presidential nominee. You have the DNC coming up, and her polling numbers are great right now for her. She has made up ground with Donald Trump in all of the swing states, is leading in a number of swing states, is leading nationally, and she just raised more than $300 million, whereas Donald Trump raised just about $130 million in that same time period. So she's doubled Donald Trump's fundraising. Over 170,000 new volunteers have signed up to join her campaign as well. A number of these donors that have donated to her campaign are first-time donors, which is a pretty big deal. And she's about to pick her VP nominee, which means that her candidacy and her campaign is now only going to take off further. So that's where the state of play is. You have RFK Jr., who's admitting to discarding a dead bear cub. Donald Trump, who's a convicted felon who can only attack Kamala Harris based on her race and not her qualifications. And Kamala Harris, who is a legit leader who literally just negotiated one of the biggest prisoner swaps in American history and really since the Cold War. So vote accordingly. That's where we're at. As always, if you like this content, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, give this video a like and comment, and I will see you at the next video. Thanks so much, folks.